Guy, you do anything for your birthday before the match then, together?
Standoff. No, just day in the life. Another day of training this morning, preparing for a big game.
You must have been looking forward to this press conference today, were you?
Oh yeah, it's been a real highlight on the calendar.
Can you still understand the interest people have?
Of course, yeah. I think it's it is unusual, and it's the first time that two identical twins have ever coached against each other. So I understand that's of great interest. But when you're 35 years of age and you've been constantly compared and spoken about as one instead of individuals, it probably starts to wear thin after a while. But I can completely understand the interest other people have in it.
Did you play against each other when you were at Hawthorn?
I don't think we ever did. Yeah, no, we missed each other each time. I think played against Brisbane a couple of times when I was at Hawthorn, but Chris wasn't playing in those games.
Before games that you may have played, Geelong may have played an opponent you're coming up against, would you talk to each other about their different game styles and stuff like that before games?
Oh look, we talk generally about footy and the trends in the game, but not in specifics as to how an opposition would play or how to beat them, or because we're very close as brothers, and we've had common interests our whole lives. So we speak generally about a lot of things, but at the end of the day, we're also very competitive, and Chris wants his team to win, and I want my team to win, and he's not going to give me any advantage to help North Melbourne win, and I'm not going to certainly give Geelong any heads up as to how they can improve. So we talk about footy, but not specifics, because we're very competitive and both of us want to win.
Did he talk more when you were young as well, no? Chris?
Did Brad talk more? Not that I know of. No, I mean, this is a little bit different. I'm normally his senior, but he's the experienced one at the moment, so I'll let him take the lead.
How would you feel if a little brother breaks your perfect record?
Oh, well, it's not my record. Oh, sorry, for the start to the career. It's going to be someone at some point. That's the reality. I mean, we're really focused on what we have to do this week. I know a lot of people are trying to sort of shift our attention to the future, but we've been at pains to talk about where we want to be, and we are trying to improve as a football side. And I know that sounds a little bit strange because Geelong's been so good in the past, but we have changed a few things and we need to keep working really hard. So this is just another step.
Just judging by the start of the event there, you're aware that a win this week gives you a new record at Skilled Stadium. Is that something you were?
No, I wasn't really aware of. I was aware it was a long stretch, but yeah, I was going to say it's that has got very little to do with me. But we do have a very proud group of players, and they hate losing at any time. But particularly down at Skilled Stadium, we think. We know we're hard to beat there, but we know we're going to have to play our best to maintain that.
You mentioned they are very competitive. Is that something they were aware of going into this week?
The players?
Yeah. That it would create a new record if they do?
No, I'm not sure. Yeah, we certainly haven't brought it up. They haven't brought it up with me, but I wasn't aware of it, so they may be, not sure.
If we go on to football, your mum would have been really proud of you so many times in your lives, playing and premierships and stuff. What about this week? I've seen the two boys on another level going against it. How does she feel about it? Have you even spoke to her about it?
No, Mum's in a very familiar place here as well. I mean, we've competed against each other all our lives, so this is of more interest to other people because there's more spotlight on it. But Mum's been put in this situation many times, so she just wants us both to do our best, and as long as we do that, she's always been happy.
She go to the winners' rooms or the losers' rooms, or go to both?
Oh, she barracks for North Melbourne apparently, so I guess I didn't know that.
Is that true or not?
I'll have to ask her tonight. Well, she's got all sorts of memorabilia, scarves and caps and everything, so.
Because teams coming off a bye are yet to beat a team that hasn't had the bye the previous week.
Is that right?
This year, yeah, the only
Okay.
teams
Has Collingwood had to buy it?
that have won.
No. Okay.
What do you make of it?
Not much. No, I mean, I wasn't trying to be smart with my answer there, because we didn't have a bye, but we had a 10 or 12 day break leading into the Hawthorn game, and we thought that our playing group responded really well to that.
Now we've had another bit of a break, so we should be nothing if not fresh. It's really hard to comment on how other teams approach things, but I think over the course of the year it'll balance itself out. But one thing I'm very confident of, if you ask teams would they prefer a couple of weeks off during the year or not, I think they'd take the weeks off.
But how's your preparation different this week to cater for that extra?
Yeah, we try to keep the post-game pretty consistent and the pre-game consistent, and then the time in between we've been able to give our players a bit of extra time off, and some of them have needed it. We've got a few guys that are just shaking off a few minor injuries and still might be touch and go, so if we had a shorter break they certainly wouldn't have played on the weekend, and even still they're probably pushing things a little bit to get up for the North game.
I heard the feeling match review earlier in the week was probably a lot better than what it's been in the last couple.
Well, it was a little bit different in terms of content because we were able to focus on some things that we'd been working on and we actually did quite well. Whereas previously it had been things we'd been focusing on that were still letting us down. So it was pleasing from a coaching group perspective that the things we'd actually been working on at training we'd actually seen come through in the game. So that was pleasing, but we're still really conscious we've got a lot of work to do, and while we've improved certain areas, we're still yet to show that we can compete against the better side. So we've got to keep really working hard on the things that are going to make us a good side, and the defensive part of our game's been a big focus, and that improved last week. But we're going to get really tested against a genuinely good football side, particularly offensively. They're going to be very hard to stop down at Skilled Stadium when they've got the ball in their hands.
Do you have to sell belief at all this week, Brad? Given their record down there, your record down there recently is not good. Your record against them recently anywhere is not good.
I think that goes for about, including the Gold Coast played you guys yet? No. So it goes for about 15 other sides in the competition. Not too many sides have a good record against Geelong the last 5 years. So, I think that's largely irrelevant. I think that, in terms of selling belief, players after a while start to see through you when you try and sell belief when the results aren't there. So until we start to play footy that's good enough against good sides, then I can try and con them into thinking they're good footballers, but they've got to prove it and get some evidence for themselves.
What was the most pleasing aspect of the performance on the weekend? Which you saw again in the review, which you're trying to hammer home to beat Geelong next week?
Oh look, I thought we controlled the game. I mean, I thought against Port Adelaide that we made it hard for them to score, and so that's always going to help you win games of footy if the opposition find it hard to score against you. So, but the challenge has always been against Geelong that you can only hold them out for so long. They've got so many talented players across all lines that it's a bit like trying to hold up the damn wall. So we're going to need a really concerted 22-man effort on the weekend to even be competitive against them.
Can Mooney come back this week, Chris?
Yeah, he's looking pretty good. If he's in reasonable shape, we're keen to play him. But as Cam himself has said already this year, it's kind of a 1 week at a time sort of thing. If he's feeling good enough to play, we're really keen to get him into the side because he is an important part of our team. But if he doesn't quite come up this week, then we'll look to play him next week.
Who else was under a bit of a cloud that you were alluding to before?
Yeah, Cameron Ling's got a little bit of a hamstring problem that is kind of plaguing him a little bit. He had a significant tear through the pre-season, has come back and has played really well. Had a great game last week against Hawthorn on Hodge. But he's one that the break came at a good time for, but he hasn't trained all that well so far, so he's no certainty to play. There are a few other guys. They're not huge things. I'd expect all the others to be okay.
People often say that you can see a team play through its coach. For example, you see a Richmond through a Damien Hardwick or a Brisbane through a Lee Matthews. Looking at each other, do you see Chris in Geelong and vice versa? Do you know something about Brad that you see come out in North Melbourne?
I think we're both influenced by our time at Brisbane. Certainly Lee Matthews has had a big influence over us as players, and I assume both of us as coaches. And most of those things are the fundamentals of the game, the things that don't change over a long period of time. We certainly, both teams play completely different styles to the way Brisbane played because the games move so fast. So you can't hold on to all those specifics, but certainly we would share similarities around how we think the game should be played.
Which is based around contested footy.
Yeah, all the
Just those
cliches. I mean,
fundamentals of footy.
yeah, but I know we both value players that win their own footy, but it's not contested possession at the expense of everything else. You know, I said after our game last week, a big part of me admires the players that do the things that I could never do. And in a way, you are drawn to those sort of players. You know, Daniel Wells, when you see him get the ball, I think that excites us all. And that's certainly not what we're talking about when we draw back on our experiences at Brisbane. But the really good offensive players of Brisbane were fantastic contested players, first and foremost. And I think, well, I'm pretty confident that that's the case for our teams now.
Do you agree with that?
Totally. I mean, I marvel at some of the things that the modern day footballers can do. I mean, I constantly hear people say certain aspects of the game, you know, haven't improved. Well, do yourself a favour and go and get a DVD of a game even 10 years ago, and it is so different. I mean, players are so highly skilled now. They're more finely tuned as athletes. So, you know, I do get drawn to the players, as Chris said, that can do things that I could never dream of doing. But I admire the players who have, you know, what I call probably total football aspects covered. You know, and Chris mentioned Daniel Wells for us. I look at someone like Steve Johnson, and people focus on the mercurial aspects of his game, but you know, Steve Johnson can win a ball in a contest like anyone else. So, you know, I admire those players, but I think in terms of, you know, teams reflecting their coach, I think, you know, I hope that North Melbourne reflect the values we try and instill in our players, and you know, off-field values, but also on-field values and the things we hold dear.
Chris, I appreciate what you both say about how you're different people and very competitive. But this one, Brad had a really strong first year as coach and he's got a lot of applause for the job he's done. Did that give you a fair bit of confidence, you know, when you come to that point where you go, well, as Neil Craig said, you're now in the seat. Did you sort of have that confidence, well, similar people in some ways, you know, getting the job done? Yeah,
I mean, he showed it could be done, but even he would say that he's got a long way to go. Yeah. I got myself into a little bit of trouble because I was at pains to stress that Brad's coaching path was quite different. You know, to be an assistant for such a short period of time and get an opportunity so early in his career is a little unique. And then the next year I was in the same boat. So I guess we're always going to be compared in that respect. But I'll look at. Did he give me a little bit more confidence? Maybe, but I mean, I always knew he was going to do a good job, but I was careful not to try to emulate him completely.
Were you envious?
Was I?
Were you envious that he got a job?
Oh, envious is not the right word.
What's the right word?
I mean, I was just rapt for him. Brad was probably more of a career coach than I was, and when I say career coach, you start thinking about in the last couple of years of your playing career, I expect. So it wasn't a surprise to me to see him develop really quickly. No, it's funny. I mean, I don't really want to sort of go into our relationship too much, but I don't think I've ever been envious of his success in my life.
Is there a bit of envy the other way though, Brad? The fact that he's 5-0 for the first 5 games as a coach compared to what you've had to put up with for the last?
I'd love to swap win-loss record, that's for sure, but no, not at all. I mean, I just echo what Chris just said. I mean, I think I've been happier for his success than my own. So that's the way it's always been, you know, throughout our lives. But you know, look, football is a very cyclical game, and things can turn very, very quickly. And we see that even in the first 6 weeks of football, we've seen some very popular opinions being turned on their head. So Geelong are playing fantastic footy at the moment. You know, Chris has got some great support down at Geelong in administration and in assistant coaches, and you know, he's doing a great job of leading a very talented group of players at the moment. We're very, very confident in North Melbourne, the direction we're heading, and we're very focused on doing what we have to do to get to where we want to go. And while we might be envious of Geelong's, you know, 5-0 start to the year, we're confident that we can get into that position fairly soon as well.
Brad, where's Bobby Hanson after that as well?
Well, he's a bit stiff and sore, but he actually had a bit of a jog this morning, which surprised me because I didn't think he was at that stage. And Lockie just loves the game of footy. He's declared himself a certain starter for this week. So the medical staff will make that call, not Lockie, because the way he was jogging, he looks no chance. But he would love to get out there and play. And I certainly wouldn't put it past him. But he's recovered a lot better than we thought he would. And the results from the scans were the best case scenario.
Chris, how close is Mitch Brown to getting a Sandy game?
Yeah, getting closer. He had a few weeks out a few weeks ago with a shoulder problem. Came back, kicked 7 in his first game back, and then kicked 5 on the weekend. And he's starting to look more like an AFL player. The thing we've got to keep in mind with Mitch is, even though he's in his 3rd year on the list, he broke his leg, he's had a shoulder reconstruction, he hasn't played much footy. In a lot of respects, we're treating him as a first-year AFL player. But with performances like that, it's going to get too hard to ignore pretty soon. He's not really in the mix this week, but this will probably be the only week that he's not in the mix if he keeps playing well. But the other one, Nathan Vardy, is playing just as well as Mitch. Hasn't hit the scoreboard as often, and didn't have much of the ball on the weekend, but just looked like an AFL player. So those two guys in particular, I would expect are going to play some AFL football soon.
Any other changes at North this week coming up?
Oh,
Obviously,
yeah. If Lockie's not out there are some players who are been playing some really good competitive footy, both at Werribee and North Ballarat. And Ben McKinley kicked 6 goals, on the back of I think 5 goals a fortnight ago. So he's in good form. Cam Pedersen, in a lot of ways, deserves to be in our best 22. But in terms of the structure of the side we've been picking, we've struggled to find a position for him. So we think there are plenty of replacements if Lockie doesn't come up. But I've been really pleased with the form of Werribee at VFL level this year. Our players that have gone back there have played really well. And at North Ballarat, who have been an unbelievably successful VFL side over the last few years, we're really happy with our alignment situation and the way our players are playing there. So as a match committee, it gives us a lot of comfort that we've got players in good form that are ready to come in when we need them.
When you're talking footy to each other, and you say you're talking generalities, does it ever come to a point where you bite your tongue and think, oh, I better not say that, as you might with a journo, for instance?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that you can. There are certain things, even sitting up here now, that we've got in the back of our minds. I might say that at other times, but I might not say it this week. And but I think that the things we talk about with footy are the things we've always talked about. Whether it's admiring a player like Lenny Hayes and his ability to win the ball in a contest, or even just watching a game of footy and thinking, gee, how good was that? Or just general trends to how the game's evolving. That looking at the game 6 years ago and thinking, flooding was an ugly blight on the game, and now, we're employing reverse floods. So it's just the way the game moves, and we talk about those sorts of things, but you do have to be a little bit careful of some specifics.
Chris, a lot of footy fans are already looking forward to next Friday night, Geelong Collingwood. Have you mentioned anything to your players about keeping the focus on this week?
Yeah, they're playing North Melbourne this week.
Yeah, we've certainly mentioned that. We talk about the good teams a lot, and I think footy clubs, the media, tend to look at the very best and the side that's on top of the ladder. So, when we talk about Collingwood, we're really talking about the top 4 or 5 teams in the competition and the things that we feel we need to do to beat those sort of teams. Our players get really frustrated when we look ahead too far, and I'm learning a lot from them as well. They're a fantastic group of people, and I include the coaches and administrators in that as well. They wouldn't allow me to talk about 2 weeks' time. We've got a job to do on the weekend. Understand there's a little extra interest, but that won't, from you guys in us, that won't affect our players one little bit. We know we've got to play really well, but we will continue to talk about the way we need to play long term. And we're not interested in round 5 or 6 necessarily. We need to get those wins under our belt if we can, but it's about getting to where we want to be when the real stuff starts.
You show there's interest in the media, and you said there's a little bit of interest between these two. How little is the interest? Is it still that brotherly competitiveness, like, I'll just go one up here, and is it like that? No?
I wouldn't have thought so. I mean, from my perspective, I can only speak for myself, but you know, we're in a position where we've won one game so far this season. We're desperate to get our second, so that will far outweigh. And we've never been the type of people to engage in one-upmanship.
I don't think it'd be a very good message to your players as well, to get your club, your supporters. Like the game, there's a bit of interest in us, and we understand that. We're prepared to accept that. But, gee, this game's a lot bigger than the two of us, surely.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, Mark, because the game is so much more about players and clubs than it is about coaches. I mean, I've been charged with the responsibility of coaching North Melbourne, and Chris has been charged with the responsibility of coaching Geelong, and we'll do what's in the best interest of our football clubs. So it's got nothing to do with me versus Chris. It's got to do with Geelong versus North Melbourne.
Brad, what changes have you noticed in Geelong's game style since Chris has taken over?
Oh, they're still playing really well, so not much has changed in that regard. I think they appear to be a little bit more versatile than they were. Not that they lacked versatility prior to Chris coming on board. It's just that they appear to have chosen to use their players slightly differently. I mean, I've never seen Cameron Mooney start at centre half back, for example. Noticed Steve Johnson starting a half back flank in the NAB Cup. So they're rotating their players through different positions a bit more than perhaps they used to. But I think the defensively they look very strong, and all the stats suggest that. It's very difficult to score against them once you get inside. Once you get the ball inside your own forward 50, their ability to repel your attacks is first rate, and I think is as good as anyone in the competition right at the moment. So defensively they look very sound, but it's probably their versatility more than anything.
With what you've seen of the players in the last 6 weeks at AFL level, Chris, do you feel like you're one of the luckiest blokes in the world? And I know you've put in a lot of hard work in the last few years to get to where you are, but to be given a team with such versatility and the like in your first year as a coach?
Yeah, absolutely. Blessed to deal with the players at Geelong and the people at Geelong. Yeah, I pinch myself. It is amazing. I mean, even listening to Brad's comments there, I mean, Geelong's ability to repel opposition attacks has got very little to do with me. It's got a lot to do with Matty Scarlett and Corey Enright and Harry Taylor, and I'm the first one to admit that. We're trying to develop the current players we've got, improve, on some of the older players, which is hard, bring some young players through and maybe change our game style a little bit, but that doesn't take away from the fact that I've inherited a fantastic group of people and players, and the biggest issue for us was, can they sustain the effort that they've put in for the last 4 or 5 years? And so far they've shown that they can, but that's only for 5 or 6 rounds of the year. I would expect we will keep asking those questions of them, and you'll keep asking them as well until the season's over.
Will you have a slab or a bet on the match?
No, I said this after my press conference on the game. We're not allowed to bet on footy, even at that level. AFL executives are in the room, aren't they? Right. Yeah.
Was that as bad as you thought it was going to be?
Yeah, it wasn't good. No, it wasn't good. It's the worst I've done.
It's the biggest I've done. Huh?